But we were talking about
my
Shin Godzilla.
Shin Godzilla.
So,
or Godzilla Resurgence.
is that the American title?
Yes.
Okay. I've always heard it referred to as Shin Godzilla.
I have always referred to it as that, but my understanding is when it came out in the States, it was called Godzilla Resurgence.
Okay. So, this movie actually came out earlier over in Japan, and then it had a limited release in the States on October, I believe, 14th. It would have been around the time that we started. That's why we picked it. It just says Japan is plunged into chaos by the appearance of a giant monster. That sums it up. Directed by Hideki Anno, Shinji Higuchi, written by Hideki Anno, Sean Whiteley, the English version, whatever that means. Starring Hiroki Hasagawa, Utada Takinouchi, and Satomi Ishihara. Sorry.
No, that wasn't bad.
Yeah. That's it. Willie, you have seen this before. I watched this on a plane.
Yeah, which is so weird. Can we get some context, please? Please. Were you on your way to Tokyo?
I believe this would have been, I'm thinking back here, so this would have been 2016. This would have been my wife and I were dating, and I believe this would have been our trip to London. It was our first kind of big international trip together.
You guys had started dating the year before, yes?
2015 is when we started dating. Yep.
Yeah.
So we had started dating the year before. We had been dating him for a little bit. So we decided to take a trip to London, and London is like an 8 or 9 hour flight, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
So I was kind of excited for it because that meant I could fit in like 3 or 4 movies, and I was catching up on stuff that I missed. And Shin Godzilla was on there. I'm like, oh, this is a new Godzilla movie. I never heard of it. So I watched it on the flight. It was,
all right.
Yeah, it held up well. Well, you have seen this before. Your thoughts on it?
Yeah. I'm a big Godzilla fan. I saw this when it came out on Blu-ray and home video. I did not see it in theaters. I don't even know if they were showing it anywhere near us that I can remember. Maybe they were. I didn't see it in theaters. And I remember it was a weird release because it was like 2 years previous we had the first legendary American Godzilla movie.
Right.
And then a couple years later, the first Japanese Godzilla movie in a long time since Final Wars, which was like the mid-2000s, I think. And it felt like a weird okay, so when the U.S. took its first stab at making an original Godzilla film, it was the Matthew Broderick, Roland Emmerich joint, and was not received great. And Godzilla 2000 was kind of the Japanese response of like, oh my God, they're going to kill our character.
Right.
Like, we got to fix this. And I felt like Resurgence was Japan trying to do that with 2014, and I'm like, I think 2014 was pretty well received for the most part. I mean, it did well, certainly well enough to make a couple sequels out of, do a couple sequels and stuff like that, if not critically. So I remember thinking like, this is kind of weird. Why all of a sudden are they doing this? Why do they got to compete with themselves ish? And then I watched it, and I was like, okay, this is a whole different beast.
Yeah.
This is not only is this not trying to do what the American Godzilla movie did, the 2014 one did, it's not trying to do anything that any Godzilla movie has ever done, with the exception of maybe 54, the original.
Right.
So I was pretty excited by it. It was not. I didn't know what to expect from it. It was not what I expected, and I really dug it. And I dug this incarnation of Godzilla, and I almost wish we could see more of it. And it's too bad that hasn't happened. I think the ship has sailed at this point.
Okay. We'll talk a little bit because I've got some questions to ask. Because you're more of the Godzilla.
I might have answers. I don't know. It's hard to say, but I will try, certainly.
So we've talked. What was the Godzilla movie we did on here in the past? Was it Godzilla versus?
We did Destroy All Monsters.
We did Destroy All Monsters. We did the original, and then we've done, what was the last one?
Godzilla versus Destroya.
Destroya. Yep.
Yes.
So, and I think I've talked about a little bit on those.
This is our fourth Godzilla movie. That's fun.
I am. I'm not a big Godzilla guy. It's kind of like how you are with Bond.
Yes.
I've seen them. I like some of them. Some of them I'm not as crazy
Yep.
about. A lot of them blend together for me.
Yep, that's Bond for me, man.
So it's similar in that way. I expect it. So that's the thing is I kind of expect a certain thing from the Godzilla movies that I watch.
Yeah.
And the last one we watched, Godzilla vs. Destroyer, is I think more of what I expect from a Godzilla movie.
It's the WWE match, right?
Yes.
It's the pro wrestling thing. So it's here's Godzilla. Look at him stomp around and kick buildings and stuff. What a big dummy. Oh, here's a bigger, meaner monster. Now Godzilla's going to fight him. And then he's going to beat him.
I had never seen the original, and we watched both the American and the Japanese version, and they're different. They're very different, the original ones. But I had never seen them until I think I took a college course on either horror or whatever. But I'd only known Godzilla through just like random cable viewings of those kind of 70s and 80s.
You're thinking, yeah, exactly. You saw the majority of the ones that were screened on TV, as did I, which were Godzilla was kind of a superhero.
Right, those kind of Saturday afternoon or late Friday nights type drive-in type movies. And that 54 movie is like a shock to the system in a lot of ways because it's very bleak.
It's a horror film.
Yes, it's a horror film. Godzilla is scary. He's not he is the bad guy. Or bad monster. I think we don't. Godzilla, we have not decided on the sex of Godzilla, have we?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess
I
we
will
don't
just
know.
refer to it as Godzilla.
Right.
But
yeah.
So this is kind of similar, and it's kind of so. I watched this again. We talked a little bit about our first experience. Watched it again this time, and it's weird. I liked it a little less this time.
Okay.
And I think what it is now I have a certain expectation still, and it's kind of like when they threw out that rumor of like Christopher Nolan doing a Bond movie. And I can see why people would be excited for that, but then there's me who goes, he's too much of an auteur to do a Bond movie for me. I like my Bond movies to follow a very specific...
Just a pinch of...
I don't like when someone with like too much of a trademark style.
Who directed the new one? Kerry Fukunaga?
Yes. So I'm interested to see that because I kind of like my Bond movies to be I like all Martin Campbell Bond movies where he's very workmanlike, much like Mr. Bond himself.
Yeah,
he's very workmanlike, and he's not a bad director by any means, but he's not overpowering. Like I would not want to watch a Sam Raimi Bond movie.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely,
I'd watch a Sam Raimi Godzilla movie though.
So this movie,
just saying,
this movie is. Really, it's kind of like a shock to the system when you watch it, and it's really different in some ways. It's got a different kind of it's almost got like a jazzy feel at times with some of the music, and the score is awesome.
It's really great, yeah.
But it also has this weird, confused kind of message that I think we'll talk about as we go into it. That I don't. It's fun at the beginning, and it plays as kind of a Coen Brothers-esque political dark comedy at time, kind of like Bumbling. It's like Burn After Reading but with Godzilla for a little bit, but I don't know how well it holds up like the second time because it goes on forever, that first 20 or 30 minutes, and then it has this weird ending where it's just like it proposes a solution to the problem, and the solution is, well, you just need a better government. Just like, thanks for that, guys.
Thanks, Sorkin.
Yes, thanks. Way to dig in deep for that answer. So it's got this weird message to me that's kind of muddled, but that's kind of what I picked up this time. But there's a lot to like about it, and we'll talk about that as well. So, Willie, what did you think this time around? Just general thoughts before we deep dive into the plot.
Yeah, I pretty much feel the same way you did. I did not like it quite as much this time as I did the first time. I don't think I think it's still one of the better Godzilla movies, certainly from a filmmaking perspective. I think it's one of the classier Godzilla movies, but I don't know if that's always a good thing. Sometimes I want some. I usually want a pretty heavy dose of schlock and stuff, but I enjoy Shin Godzilla. I think it's the closest to the original in terms of the tone, and certainly in terms of the interpretation of Godzilla. Minus maybe Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, Giant Monsters All Out Attack, which is a real title. That one has a very evil, nasty Godzilla in it as well. But this one's scary. This Godzilla is unnerving, and it doesn't even feel like Godzilla at times. And I mean that it's like it has multiple phases and stages that are kind of, we'll talk about it, but it almost feels like its own beast. They even like refer to it as possibly being able to grow wings at some juncture and like start flying and stuff. And I'm like, this thing is terrifying. Like, it's just gross and it's always changing. I do think the first 20, 30 minutes, by the time you get to like the last little chunk of it, I'm ready to like okay, I need some Godzilla now. And then it does it again for a while Godzilla's dormant, kind of in the middle of the movie, where I'm like, can we please get Godzilla back now? Like, I get it. I get what we're doing here. Yeah. I just need to move on now. I would like to see more laser breath, please. So, yeah, there are definitely... and I did not feel that the first time I saw it. So I think this time, those sections with the human characters and the politics and the social commentary, which I understand and I do think is interesting, and I do think elevates this in terms of what it's trying to accomplish. Above destroy all monsters.
This is elevated Godzilla.
Elevated Godzilla, yes. It is. Sure, it is. It's not as elevated as Godzilla versus Hedorah, though. You ever see that bad boy?
No.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Everybody was on acid. All the Japanese people were on acid.
Oh, so it's elevated in that way. It's not.
Indeed. But it's also an anti-pollution movie.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, I mean,
there's a lot of disco in it.
Oh, wow.
You need to watch this movie. Anyway, okay, moving on.
Throw that one on the list.
Overall, I do really enjoy Shin Godzilla. Is it in my top 3 or 5? No. Does it break the top 10? It very well may. I'd have to really crunch.
How many are there again?
28?
Okay.
28? I'll look it up.
Okay.
There's in the 20s. Yeah. But it's worth a watch. It does, I think repeat viewings do not help it. So...
I'm kind of with you there. Okay, so let's do the plot real quick. Let's go through the plot real quick. The Japanese Coast Guard boards a small boat in Tokyo Harbor where a scientist has disappeared. The boat rocks with an explosion and a large amount of, it's like blood or something, right? Loads it into an
There are 36 movies in the Godzilla franchise.
It overflows into an underwater tunnel and causes a bunch of car accidents. We then jump to the Japanese government trying to determine what has caused the incident. At first they were like, no way, it's not a living thing, but there's a news report on TV that shows like a giant serpentine kind of tail. We know who this is. They do not. There is quite a bit of back and forth here on what is causing this and how it should be communicated to the public until the Prime Minister himself decides he needs to make a statement. So he tells the people there is absolutely no way this creature can make landfall. But guess what, Willie?
Oh, he does.
Immediately during the speech.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing. Yeah, I like the bit, and it's totally representative of like the depiction, this film's depiction of authority figures, especially older authority figures, where the guy immediately walks in, he's like, this thing made a fool of me. Like, he's like upset that like Godzilla embarrassed him, like, because he was wrong. It's so funny. Not upset that like, countless lives are being lost in this harbor.
Right.
Yeah, like he got made a fool of.
So this is where I want to stop it. This is the discussion point I want to talk about a little bit, because in that 20 seconds there, I just summed up the first 20 minutes of this movie pretty much. And the other thing is I was kind of taken aback maybe this time. How do I want to put this? This is a surprisingly conservative, nationalistic maybe movie. It's weird because it's kind of anti-bureaucracy. For sure. And it's anti-big government, I think, at times, too, and anti-kind of the bickering back and forth. And it presents that in a lot of ways, like I said, kind of as like a Coen Brothers farce in the first 20 minutes.
Yeah,
of the
for
movie.
for sure.
And so it's kind of anti-big government, anti-all that stuff, and is like really pro... Shinzo Abe, who is the prime minister, or was the prime minister until last year, from 2012 to 2020, he says... I think that Godzilla's popularity is rooted in the unwavering support that the public has for the self-defense forces, he said to the Washington Post. So so like that, he loved this movie for that reason, because
Amazing.
It's like very pro defense force. Yes.
Amazing. I mean, they get the job done.
Yes. So
pretty succinctly too.
I was taken aback by that, but like I mentioned later on, it kind of weirdly like it doesn't backtrack on that. It just kind of says like, yeah, I mean, government's bad, but we just need a better one.
I know. It does lose me a little bit there. Where yeah.
I think this movie does, and then this movie does do kind of a clever thing. We'll talk about that a little later, with how it presents. The politicians always feel safe early in the movie. They're in their own separate area. The music kind of cuts out when they cut to them in like their war rooms and stuff. And on the ground, it's all chaos.
I do love them shuffling from room to room, though. I just want to throw that out there.
Right.
Like the all the red tape, the bureaucracy in the movie is so funny to me, and it's meant to be funny. Like, they get up and move into different rooms depending on the scenario or the situation 5 or 6 different times.
Yeah.
And there's no, like, the world is on fire. What are you doing? Like they're like, all right, this is not in our jurisdiction. Let's get up and go to this room with this board of people. It's so funny. It's the best.
There are things you can read, and you watch this today through 2020, 2021 eyes, and just see people kind of arguing in offices where they are safe while like people are out in the world going about their dying and dying.
It's amazing.
Yeah. The creature that emerges from the bay he's like a baby Godzilla.
It's weird looking. It freaks me out.
Baby Shin. Yeah. He's kind of like an eel.
Kind of, but he's got weird googly eyes.
He's got like little arms. He's very cute. He kind of like you're right. He's got kind of like bulldoggy features.
Yeah, kind of squiggly. Yeah.
He's dragging himself around Tokyo, and he's dumping blood from his gills or its gills.
It's so nasty. That's your first, like, beyond how weirdly disturbing looking and kind of adorable this thing is. It starts spewing blood out of its gills, and you're like, this is weird. Like, this is not the Godzilla that I'm used to or comfortable with.
Yeah, he's like knocking cars around, and he's climbing on buildings and stuff.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you saw this little guy running around?
Yeah.
Berkeley?
I don't know what you do.
Well, I tell you what the government is doing. They're having meetings.
What are we going to do about this?
Luckily for them, the creature stops suddenly. He collapses in the street, but then he starts to grow, and then he starts to morph, and now he can stand upright. Finally, it morphs into a new form, and then he kind of like drunkenly stumbles around Tokyo for a little bit.
Yeah, he's still kind of a big goof.
He's like a baby deer.
Yeah.
He's a baby Godzilla.
Yep.
So the self-defense force finally shows up to attack it. However, the prime minister calls off when he is alerted there are still citizens in the vicinity. The monster roars, glows red, and destroys a building, and then he heads back to the sea. He leaves the government trying to figure out what the hell is going on.
Yeah, they're pretty clueless. Well, I mean, I guess you would be, but yeah.
So this movie is kind of inspired based around the Fukushima disaster in 2011. And real quick, I wanted to
tell us about the Fukushima.
I wanted to touch on that real quick, and then we'll get back into the plot. So in 2011, there was an earthquake that hit 97 kilometers north of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The water from the tsunami overwhelmed the seawall and flooded the plant and knocked out power there. There were also explosions and radioactive material that began to leak into the atmosphere and the Pacific, and it caused evacuations. Now, there weren't any immediate deaths caused by the power plant, but there were 16 workers were injured. Some were taken to the hospital for high-level radiation exposure. Earlier this year, actually, the UN said there were no adverse health effects due to the radiation, but residents remain wary, and many still haven't returned to their homes. There was also an uptick in thyroid cancer in the area, which is kind of similar to what happened with Chernobyl.
I was going to say that was pretty.
That was like kind of a.
That was a similar thing, right? Wasn't that the case with the John Wayne movie? That shot in the... there was a lot of thyroid cancer, I think, related to that, too.
Yes. Yeah, so critics blame the lack of preparedness for the event, saying that both the government and the plant failed to meet safety requirements for the plant itself. The prime minister at the time also said the state deserved blame, and a court ruled that the government should compensate the evacuees. We just talked a little bit about the thyroid cancer, which is it's one of the most survivable cancers. I think it's like a 93, 94%.
But still,
it's still something you have to deal with. It's something a person has to deal with. There's effects that go psychologically with that. There's effects economically with that, with money. There's also the relocation aspect, the kind of uprooting people from their homes. And there was also a 2011 study which said the lack of precautions and the delayed response in relaying the information to the public also made things worse. And on top of that, the environmental cleanup, the waste leaking into the atmosphere, the sea, the food chain, psychological effects, disaster like this, and the thing that everybody has in the back of their mind, which is Chernobyl, and the general anxiety and the psychological consequences that go along with crises like this. We're seeing the fallout now with COVID. And it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. So that is kind of that's what a lot of this movie deals with, particularly in the first half, is kind of that delayed response to something that, because it's a lot of bickering back and forth and coming up with like what it should be named or stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's funny because like you recognize that there is a reason for the bureaucracy and a reason for all the red tape you have to cut through to make a decision or get something done. I get it, and I think that we all understand it, hopefully, to a certain extent. But there are times when you just, well, I guess like a giant monster breathing fire and stomping all over buildings, where you have to like, that kind of stuff is so frustrating. And it's like, you kind of want, you almost want your leaders, the people in positions of power, to like throw out the rule book a little bit and like handle it, like
make a decision,
please.
Yes,
you know, there are times when the bureaucracy is needed. In most cases, it's important and it's good to have, but every once in a while, you just got to make a decision and.
Well, they talk a little bit about the lack of regulation at the power plant, and that regulation is needed. But you're right; it is kind of like a, hey, make the call. We'll bitch about it later. Like we'll complain about it later, because there are people in the streets, getting killed by this really adorable,
cute
Shin
little
Godzilla.
blood spewing.
Yes, he's spewing blood. He's ruining my clothes.
Yeah, but he's really cute.
He's really cute, but it is like, it's easy for you guys to sit up there and make these decisions while you're completely safe.
In your towers.
But like, I gotta go to work. Like, I gotta go to the stock exchange. The stock exchange is still open in there. I gotta go to work later, and I got Godzilla running around town.
My engine's flooded in Godzilla blood. Like, what are we doing?
So the committees are formed. They call on the U.S. government to help. Big mistake, fellas.
Oh man, that's some fun stuff right there.
Because we're just going to try and nuke it. But anyway, they speculate that it's the energy coming from the nuclear fission because of trace amounts of radiation found on its tail. They also decide that the reason it went back to the sea is an attempt to cool down because he's overheating. They also figure out that it's the genome has 8 times the DNA as humans, which is why it can self-mutate at this point. We also get a quick bit about a missing scientist research, which kind of explains why he's dubbed Godzilla by the American military. This is a big like Godzilla origin info dump, basically, this section of the movie.
And this is one of the it gets to be a bit much for me. This is where I started one of the bits in the movie where I go, all right.
Can you explain the scientist stuff to me?
No.
Okay. I never grasped that.
No, I can't. I don't fully understand. I do know that obviously the U.S. is involved in the creation of the creature, or they're partially responsible for it, and that one of the reasons why they are trying to literally go nuclear is to like cover up their own involvement in like which is really like that's one moment in the movie where I was like, oh shit, like that totally would happen too. Like I'm sorry, but it would. Like, this is 100% accurate. But yeah, I didn't fully. I for all the Godzilla origin we get into in this, I don't necessarily have a full understanding of what happened and who was involved in what aspect of it. I just know that man screwed up again, and And
the U.S. involvement is a lot of we're kind of the bully here in a lot of ways, kind of the overbearing bully telling them what to do, and basically later on we'll be like, hey, gotta get this taken care of. We're gonna drop a bomb on you. Yeah.
Fix this.
Which is our thing. Which is what. Yeah. It's probably one of the more believable aspects of the movie. So
it might be.
I had a couple questions for you, real quick. Here.
Yes.
This is a fully CG Godzilla, correct?
Yeah. So I'm confused by this because apparently I was wrong. I thought, there's obvious CG in the movie, no question. I thought that a lot of it was a guy in a suit. A lot of the shots of just
those
kind of
later
him,
shots where he's big and in the city.
I thought it was a guy in a suit.
Apparently, they make it look very much man in suit.
I thought, and that's why I assumed it was a guy in a suit, because I'm like, okay, they're going old school, and that this is a nice way to differentiate themselves from what the U.S. Godzilla was doing with the full CG creature. But this is all CG.
Yeah.
So they purposefully made the CG look like a guy in a suit.
Right.
Which is an interesting choice.
Yeah.
Honestly, at this point, it's probably cheaper somehow to do CG than it is to have a guy in a suit. So Probably saved him
the
money.
shot of him though too that I think you're talking about, where it is kind of a classic Godzilla shot of him stomping through Tokyo and you can see all the buildings and stuff.
It looks like a dude in a suit,
and it's one of my favorite shots in the movie. But it's probably just that connection to.
And that has to be why they made sure to design those sections like that, because for as familiar as we are with the image of Godzilla being a guy in a suit stomping around and crushing toy buildings, Godzilla is that much more ingrained in Japanese culture and pop culture.
Right.
So, like that, I think to lose that, or to make him Godzilla more agile and I don't know, more reptilian, would be a lot like the American Godzilla, either iteration. So, I can see why they did that.
What do you think of his kind of abilities here?
It's insane.
Okay, and this is kind of part of making him scary again.
It's
kind
insane.
of like updating him, right? Because he doesn't have these abilities in some of the... No, okay.
No, he's got the fire breath thing. Obviously, is a Godzilla thing. Although it's usually like a blue, whatever. He can breathe fire. He could in the original too, but in this one, he's like, his jaw unhinges like one of those guys from Blade 2.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what is happening? Like, and then like he shoots a concentrated like laser beam out of it.
Right.
And then he has that bit where his tail spikes and stuff like fire beams up. I mean, it's some crazy shit. Like his tail's got like a lightsaber attached to the end of it, essentially. Yeah, I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, what? That's not a Godzilla thing, you know? Like, but I think that's what's cool is this is what I was saying earlier, is like, this almost feels like a Godzilla, like a villain that Godzilla would fight in one of those other movies where the Godzilla is the good guy, right? But this time around, it is Godzilla. This is the version that you're going to get. I'd watch the hell out of a Shin Godzilla versus Godzilla movie where it was like classic, like hero Godzilla versus this monstrosity. I would love it. He's terrifying.
Any final thoughts here on kind of the Godzilla in this movie? I guess the look and the CG maybe overall in this movie.
I think the CG is mostly pretty good. I mean, it's not,
the trains suck. I have that note in here.
The trains look terrible. When they hit them, they look ridiculous.
Trains and like helicopters never look really good either.
No, they don't.
Yeah,
I'm
specifically thinking of the helicopters at the end of Spider-Man 2.
They're so bad. Oh my god. No, he looks cool. The design's cool. They're going for scary. The eyes are weird and unnerving and terrifying. The red under, like, he's not even green, which is what you think of when you think of guys like shades of green or gray. He's like black, and he's got this like sinewy, like muscly, almost looks like gashes red underneath sections of his skin.
Right.
It almost looks like lava sometimes too, where he looks molten. It's a cool design. It's a unique Godzilla design.
That's a similar design to Godzilla versus Destroyer, right? Like
when he's melting down.
Right.
Yeah. That is that is the closest, I think. You're right, that we get to that in the older movies. It's a cool design, and it does a great job, I think, of separating this version from, like we talked about before, the other maybe more heroic versions or classic versions of Godzilla. It's a cool design, very cool. I want to see it used again. I'd love to see it used again.
All right, so back to the movie. So Godzilla, he's back from the sea now, and he's big, he's bulky. He's been down on the seafloor. He's been ocean floor. He's been lifting. What do you think Godzilla lifts to? Do you think what he listens to when he's like down there getting his pump on?
Well, it's got to be his own song. He's kind of a douche. Blue Oyster Cult.
I was gonna say, or the American Godzilla 1998 soundtrack with P. Diddy, Puff Daddy, and Jimmy Page. Come with me.
Yeah. Or
I'll fucking bite you. Can't stand.
It's
nobody.
good stuff. Or the Serge Tankian. I don't know how to pronounce. From System of a Down.
I like that version.
It's sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it rules. Maybe he's listening to that. I don't know. This Godzilla's a dick. He's probably listening to Cannibal Corpse. This Godzilla.
Oh, this Godzilla here? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he don't play.
Yeah.
He's listening to, like, Devourment. Like some real...
straight up death metal.
Straight, I mean, just like grindcore. Just as dark as it gets. Like... Yeah, like songs about baby eating and stuff. You know, like he's getting real because this is a mean Godzilla.
Right.
Yeah, that's what he listens to when he pumps.
So he's back. He's wreaking havoc in Tokyo again. The prime minister finally says he's like, we got to hit it with everything we got.
Yeah. Which they always do in these movies.
Yep. And guess what? It doesn't matter because this is where the U.S. government steps in and they start dropping bombs on him too. These work a little better. I just want to say we kind of drew the first blood here when we.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
I just want to give us some credit.
Yeah, we did something.
We get him to bleed. But it also pisses Godzilla off more, which is probably an issue. This is kind of like when a fighter sees his own blood in like a UFC fight, and he's just like, ah.
What's the line?
Or she.
What's the Ben Stiller line from Nobody Makes Me Bleed My Own Blood? Yeah, that.
Godzilla's spine glows, and it starts vomiting purple and black, and he hits his fire breath button, and he lights up part of the city. And
yeah, he does.
He takes out the bomber that hit it, and the U.S. government is shocked. Can't believe it. The Japanese and U.S. armies get their asses kicked here. The city is up in flames.
This is the first time he busts out the lasers, yes?
I think so. Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now Godzilla, he's tired here, so he just kind of freezes in place like a statue.
So
this is okay. So this is where I want to talk about a little bit about, but yeah, say what you're going to say because we'll stop here because I want to talk about a little bit about the 1954 Godzilla 2 and the kind of the callbacks and stuff.
Yeah. Just a couple things real quick. So one, I love Godzilla because like when he gets tired, he just stops.
Right.
I like American Godzilla a little bit more for this, just because like I like how he just falls over. That's funnier to me because he's like. Fuck it, I'm napping. You just kind of like I've done that before.
It is the very American version of Godzilla. He's just like, hey, I got a nap in here.
It's incredible.
He's kind of chunky.
Yes, the Japanese Godzilla, Shin Godzilla, is very Bushido. He's very he just kind of stands there quietly and waits for his moment to strike again. But yeah, American Godzilla's like. Anyway,
it's more the Japanese Godzilla more zen-like, and the American
very zen-like, yes,
just on a bender.
Yeah, it's very indicative of the countries of origin. The other thing I want to mention before you get into that is this is where we hit my boredom point a little bit with the movie.
We're about to get it, yeah.
The first 20-30, like they are slow moving, but I kind of give Godzilla movies that because they tend to do that for better or worse. The middle section here, we don't have Godzilla fighting another monster in this movie at all. I don't know. I just don't have enough excitement going on to keep me. You know what I mean?
Right.
So anyway,
we get some fun nods to the original. We get a little bit of the score here. This is also kind of where they work in more of those references to the Fukushima disaster and the reactor because I think I wish I should have wrote down where I got this from, but someone says this is from an article too. It says it's standing like a giant statue in the middle of a destroyed city, a parallel to the destroyed remains of the Fukushima reactor, which is standing there and can't be removed. So Godzilla is kind of there, much like the reactor, as kind of a constant reminder of that threat of kind of the nuclear activity and the threat of disaster that kind of goes along with it.
And of course, at the end of the movie, which we'll get to, once again we wind up with an actual literal frozen Godzilla that looks like a stone statue,
right,
standing there as a reminder. So that's cool. It's interesting, and then I think that because we're maybe not as familiar with like the Fukushima disaster. Like I'd heard of it beforehand, but I'm not as like intimately familiar with it because it's something that affected. It sounds horrible, but somebody else, right? So you're just not as familiar with it. I can now see the context of that, and I go, okay, that's cool. That's a neat bit of imagery. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the end here.
Let's do it.
Let's rush to the finish. Godzilla is winning big time, so we've got to figure out a way to stop it. It's frozen because it's replenishing its nuclear power, and it has been depleted, so we've got to study it. So that's what we do. We discover that Godzilla's got some cool powers. He's got a built-in radar system. Its blood is a coolant. Its severed body parts can grow into new Godzillas.
It's insane, dude. This thing is just like a horror. Like this is a horror movie wrapped up in one package. It's terrifying.
The U.S. government finds this out, and the woman there, who I'm sorry, but she's not good at this movie. Like the U.S. the woman who wants to be president, she's just completely miscasted by it.
Oh yeah, she's not. No, I mean, like I think her performance is maybe fine. I don't really know.
It's weird.
She's a Japanese actress playing Is she even playing a Japanese American?
I don't. Yeah, I think so. And she's supposed to be kind of a diplomat. I think kind of like an envoy between the two.
Okay.
It's very strange. And the U.S. side of things just kind of floats in and out. And is the person on the plane with her supposed to be the president?
I think so.
So I do love that because it's just they cast just random old white man.
It's the best. It's accurate.
But it's so funny too because the U.S. and her just kind of float in and out of the movie at random times, and she's kind of scolding too.
She's that actress is probably best known for the Attack on Titan movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she and the rest of us over here in the States, we get impatient because we're like, hey man, this could get to California soon. Let's get to the West Coast. And we're like, you got 2 weeks, guys, and then we're nuking Tokyo because that's our answer. Luckily, the scientists, they formulate the Yoshiari strategy?
Yoshiari, yep.
Which involves creating a blood coagulant to cool Godzilla and freeze him. So they do that, but barely, and they've got to hurry.
Barely, though, they got like no material, barely,
Yes.
it's rough.
So they attack Godzilla, they get him down, they knock some skyscrapers on top of him, and they pin him to the ground.
This is a pretty solid plan, I gotta say.
Yes.
Shin Godzilla is a scary son of a gun, and even like the pantheon of Godzillas, he's up there in terms of like not to be messed with, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's not even fighting another monster like some of those Godzillas were. Like he's just fighting dudes, like guys, people, us, and we don't have any sort of like super laser weapons or anything. We've got pretty standard like weapons we have today to fight him. This is a solid plan. They freeze the guy. He's getting sleepy. They're hitting him with
trains
and shit. They're knocking buildings down. Like this is a solid plan. They take care of business.
It fails the first time, but so they send more trains at Godzilla, and then that kind of works. So they pump the full amount of the coagulant into Godzilla's mouth, which does the trick, and it just kind of freezes him in the middle of Tokyo.
This is not the most. This is another issue I have with the movie. I will say.
What's that?
This is another issue I have. Another issue I have with the movie. I always naturally prefer Godzilla versus another monster because it's another monster. Like it's more bang for your buck. However, in solo Godzilla movies, I think you really can do cool Godzilla versus military fights as like the big finale. This doesn't really have much of that to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fight. It's just them beating up on Godzilla a bunch and sticking silly straws in his mouth until he gets chilly and stops moving. There's not much of a. It's not a very fun, action-packed finale, I guess. It's kind of just like the plan is executed and it works, and that's about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're at the very end now. America tells Japan that the nuke strike is paused, but if Godzilla wakes up, it's unpaused.
Yeah, I think she even says like if Godzilla wakes up again, they're doing it immediately. Like there's no like warning anymore or anything.
So Japan must be rebuilt and must be better, and then the final shot is of Godzilla's frozen tail and a bunch of frozen humanoid creatures like in the process of emerging.
Where's my sequel?
Like that's setting up a sequel of like humanoid Godzillas.
Dude, right? like human-sized Godzillas. That sequel would rule. Like make the second movie. Not even about keep Godzilla frozen the whole time. Make the second movie about like terrifying like human Godzilla hybrid things that are like trying to wreak havoc in Tokyo. That rules.
Yeah,
I want to see that movie. Anyway,
a couple of bits about the end because I talked a little bit, but there is kind of a little bit of references to the kind of relationship between the U.S. and Japan since World War II, and kind of how the U.S. has kind of played kind of like the overbearing kind of always looking over the shoulder. There's a funny bit between the two, and at some point he says something to the effect of like we must hold ourselves accountable in the government. And for some reason I took it as like the U.S. lady looked at him like, yeah, you might. Not I'm in the U.S. government. Like she should have gave him the jerk off motion. Like, yeah, buddy.
Nice try, dummy.
Good for you. So that made me laugh. And then,
so sad, but so true.
But then this is where it kind of, I don't have a problem with like any of the movie, like the movie, like the nationalism, anything like that. I do have a problem though when a movie tries to give me an answer for the problem, and the answer, like I said, is as simplistic as like
do better,
or the younger generation will fix this.
Let them figure it out.
So because that seems to be where the movie ends up, which is just like we must rebuild Japan to be even better. Like, oh wow,
how do we do that?
Deep stuff, guys. So those were just this was rumored to only cost $10 million.
If that's true, that's very impressive.
Yes. It was a major hit in Japan. It surpassed the $160 million Hollywood remake in 2014 in terms of the box office. I don't have exact numbers here. I should have looked them up. But yeah, we still haven't gotten a sequel. Any reasons to that, you think? Is it political reasons? Is it kind of like contractual licensing?
I don't think so. I mean,
because it was a hit. And
I know.
It was pretty well received over here from what I can gather, too.
I think it was, yep. I think a lot of folks that did not like the 2014 Godzilla movie here, I think, liked this even more because it was a bit more of a return to form, I guess, in some ways. It's strange. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know that Toho moved forward with a trilogy of animated Godzilla
Have
films.
you watched those?
I have not.
Okay.
I should. I do want to. I have not watched them. No, I saw the first one. It was okay. I'm not big on anime.
Okay.
It's just not my thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it takes me. I don't know. It's hard for me to get into it. They looked interesting, but I don't know what's going on with Toho with Godzilla. Godzilla's in a weird spot right now in general because I think the contract with Toho is over for Legendary.
Okay.
I don't think any of those. I don't think 2014 did crazy numbers enough to warrant a sequel. Certainly, I know that King of the Monsters did not perform well, and I don't think Godzilla vs. Kong performed. I think it did better than King of the Monsters, but it also opened...
It was weird. Like, that one was one of the weirder ones in terms of release, because that was like the first HBO Max release then, too. So I'm curious to see the box office. The thing is, though... The thing is with the HBO Max releases, is as we've gotten, but I don't know. It was also released at a different time in the year. It was also a few months back. The thing is, as we see the box office for stuff like Venom and Halloween Kills, you start to realize maybe some of those movies were just going to underwhelm, like the Suicide Squad, and maybe a little bit of Godzilla vs. Kong. Maybe they were just going to underwhelm anyway at the box office.
I think that both of those movies were going to,
right,
and I think there's a lot of factors involved in that.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that I don't know why at this point Legendary would pay Toho to license Godzilla anymore because it just doesn't seem to be.
It seems like this current one to me too has kind of run its course now. That
they're going to be making Kong movies, if anything, and that's fine. So I guess Toho would.
I really loved Godzilla vs. Kong though too. So
I had a ton of fun with it.
Yeah,
I thought it was really. I thought it was might be the best of the three because it just doesn't.
It's my favorite of the three. It's my favorite of those Godzilla ones. Honestly, it might be my favorite of the four. I really like Skull Island though.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like Godzilla 2014 though. I will stand by that movie. I think it's really good. Whatever. Anyway. We'll see. I think Toho will make the next movie. I wonder what it'll be. I don't think it'll be related to Shin Godzilla. I think it's been too long at this point. I think that they're going to move on to a new iteration. The Millennium series of Godzilla films has no chronology. So there's no... In the original era of Godzilla films was the Showa era, and then the Heisei era was the second era of films. Those both have a chronology, so those both follow some sort of plot line, right? The Millennium series never did. Each movie was its own story, kind of... for the most part, compact story, and they've continued that through this current era of Godzilla. I think it's the Reiwa era, which is basically just Shin Godzilla, and I guess the three animated movies, which form a story. But I almost keep those in their own separate category. I don't know. I think it's going to be its own new thing.
Yeah. So, what do you want to see in the next Japanese Godzilla movie?
I would like to see. I want to see something similar to Shin Godzilla in terms of the filmmaking approach. I want to see something that harkens back to the days of the guy in the suit.
Okay.
And, has fun with some of the human characters and the folly of man and the folly of government. I'm cool with all that. But I would like to see Godzilla fight another monster, a cool Japanese designed monster.
So you want to see Godzilla maybe back to being maybe not the good guy, but kind of
fight other monsters. I want to see. We haven't had a Japanese designed Godzilla monster that wasn't Godzilla.
Ooh, now that's another question I have, but continue.
Since Final Wars, I guess. And even then, there was really only one monster that was designed for the film. So I would like to see him fight more monsters and get back to what made, like, I think the Heisei era so much fun, was kind of an overarching story that kept going through the movies while continuing. I don't know.
So do you want to see Godzilla fight an updated version of an existing monster that has already been, or do you want to see a brand new one?
I want to see an original monster first. I want to see an original. I want to do it like Batman Begins, right? Sounds silly, I know. But the Batman Begins approach, I think, was always very smart.
I should watch
because
that
you have
again.
to. What's that?
I need to watch that movie again.
Great movie, yeah. You have to win over your audience again to earn their trust back, right? Not that they've done anything. I think certainly they don't need to do that with Shin Godzilla or the American Godzilla films. But it's been a long time since we've had a consistent Godzilla series of films. So you need to get your audience back with a fresh. Godzilla fights something fresh,
maybe something like
new.
what Pattinson Batman might
exactly,
be. Yeah.
And exciting and kind of, and then you do what Begins did, and at the end, then you hint at something established like the Joker. Then you hint at the big thing. So you have him fight a new monster, a cool new design Japanese monster.
But isn't this what Godzilla 2014 kind of did it with the Mutos?
Kind of,
yeah.
But they didn't tease any of the other monsters in Godzilla 2014.
Oh, I guess was that the King Kong tease? Okay.
Yeah. So
you're right. Yeah.
If they had done that at the end of that, I think that would have been the same approach. Yeah, for sure.
Right.
But I think you reestablish Godzilla first, but have him fight a cool foe, something that's interesting and different. And I mean, look at the design of Shin Godzilla from only 5 years ago. Like these amazing people at Toho, these amazing creature designers, can come up with an awesome Godzilla foe. So.
Let them do it.
Please do it. Go nuts. Make something cool and crazy. And then if you want to in a sequel, if the first one does well, which it probably would, then you can reintroduce some of the classic Rogues Gallery. Bring back Gigan. I want to see Gigan again. Gigan rules. Is Gigan at the top of your list of ones you want to see back? Yeah, I do, because we haven't seen Gigan in forever. See, I don't want to go right to Ghidorah or Mothra or Rodan. Let's go with some of the guys that we haven't seen in years. Let's see some updates on some characters that we haven't seen. Gigan's up there for me. I'd love to see a new Destroyer. I'd love to see a new what's his name? Anguirus. All those classic monsters that we haven't seen reintroduced yet. Yeah. Let's do that. I'm down.
I think that's all the questions I've got for you right now.
That's what I'm here for.
Do you know what Gojo thinks of this? Gojo, our resident Godzilla expert, is he a Shin Godzilla fan?
Yeah.
I should have
he
texted him.
We watched it together for the first time. I think. I want to say. I had seen it. I think. No. We watched it together for the first time. Him and I.
Okay.
He bought a copy, and him and I sat down, and watched it. Yeah, he's a fan. Yeah.
Okay.
He's a big Godzilla fan now. He's surpassed me.
Yes, that's
he's grown past me at this point, which is amazing.
I was curious. I figured, because we were texting a little bit yesterday, I figured he kind of liked this one, but I was curious what he thought of it. So okay.
Yeah, he had certainly seen of and heard of Godzilla, as had most people. But I think and I could be wrong, and he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think I kind of introduced him to like watching a bunch of them. Like watching, let's watch a few of them in a row, and I think he's like, oh, these are kind of fun, and then he's like, man, he knows it all.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
He's also a Bond expert now.
He is now, yes.
Any final thoughts on Shin Godzilla?
No, it's a cool movie. I was gonna say it's a ton of fun. It's not a ton of fun actually. It is cool to see Shin Godzilla cut loose, even if he is terrifying. No, it's a cool movie. It is kind of bogged down by trying to like vomit its message on you too much.
Yeah.
A couple different sections of the movie, but overall it's a worthy entry into the Godzilla franchise, and I think it's different enough to where I think it stands out in a film series of 36 movies. Supposedly
it is different enough. Yeah,
it's different enough to warrant kind of a special place. So how about you?
I talked a little bit. I liked it a little bit less, but I don't want to come across as too negative on it. I'm with you. I think I think part of it is like the first time I got caught up in that first 20 minutes.
Me too.
It is very funny, but it also repeats itself a lot. And on a second viewing, that's where it kind of lost a little bit for me.
I agree.
I think if I were ever to watch it again, I might just skip forward to certain parts of it.
I agree. I do. I do.
So I think it loses a little bit on repeat viewings is what I'm trying to say here. But if you haven't seen it and it might be your first time, I think you'll get a kick out of it. Especially maybe if you're not a Godzilla like expert or fan. I think this is a kind of a good movie to watch because it's not beholden to a ton of continuity. So I think this would be a good movie to kind of start with and kick off Godzilla.
I agree.
Viewing with, and it's a little bit more modern in its filmmaking and its approach to things. So I like it. I don't love it, and I kind of thought I was going to love it on a rewatch. But yeah, there is some stuff. It is a little bit repetitive.
Holding it back a bit.
Yep. Cool. Willie, where can people reach out to us?
Yeah, horror movie yearbook at gmail.com. Send us an email. Tell us what you think about the show. Give us ideas for new episodes. Let us know what you think of Godzilla as a character, as a film series. I don't know. Or not Godzilla. Whatever you want to do. We're also on Twitter at HM Yearbook. We're on Facebook and Instagram. If you look up Horror Movie Yearbook on there, you'll find us. Yeah. Send us feedback. We love to hear from you.